let me ask you something. Is our current coalition government comparable to MAGA? Are the supporters of our current coalition government comparable to MAGA, Make America Great Again, or in our case, Make Aotearoa, or Make New Zealand Great Again? Are they? I tend to say no, because I think there's only really one party that's really going down that route. The other two are very much globalist. So it's interesting for me to see one of my go-to channels if I want to laugh, PaulPolitik, try and explain why perhaps the coalition is comparable to MAGA.
Many leftists like to compare New Zealand's right-wing coalition government to the Republican Party in the United States. They compare the coalition to Trump. They suggest that they are similar. I strongly dislike this rhetoric. I don't like comparing the coalition to MAGA because it downplays how evil MAGA is. MAGA is far more evil than the coalition. The coalition is still ostensibly liberal. They still generally believe in things like freedom and democracy. MAGA does not. They hate democracy. Trump tried to rig the 2020 election. He pardoned his supporters who violently tried to prevent the certification of the result. They hate freedom. Trump crushed abortion rights, promised to imprison flag burners, and deport pro-Palestine protesters. MAGA is far more fascistic and authoritarian than the coalition. And then there is foreign policy. The coalition has supported Ukraine and offered tepid condemnation of Israel. Trump has abandoned Ukraine and sided with Russia. Trump has called for the ethnic cleansing of Palestine. Trump has suggested attacking Greenland, a NATO ally. Trump's foreign policy is far more deranged and unhinged than anything advocated by the coalition. I despise the coalition, but to compare them to MAGA is to downplay the evil of MAGA, because the coalition is nowhere near as bad as MAGA. It is not even close. The coalition is bad, MAGA is evil. The only coalition politician who is comparable to Trump is Shane Jones, a corrupt lunatic with a huge ego and no principles. They have a lot in common. Shane Jones has called his opponents vermin. He screeches about deporting Mexicans. He has even suggested imprisoning members of the Maori Party. He is the only coalition politician who is anything like Donald Trump. He has the same amoral, self-obsessed, authoritarian personality. Thankfully, he lacks Trump's charisma. The coalition is bad, but I warn against overstating just how bad they are. Doing so downplays the evil of Trump.
Isn't that interesting? This guy is actually convinced. He's actually convinced himself that Shane Jones has no basis for suggesting that we should imprison any Te Pāti Māori members of Parliament. 20 years ago, there was a pretty valid argument. Before we repealed the sedition laws, there was a valid argument for the imprisonment of Te Pāti Māori MPs. 20 years ago, there was a valid argument for literally dispersing Toitū Te Tiriti activations through government force. Why? Because it's sedition. But fortunately for them, we don't have sedition laws anymore. Certainly none that'll have you in any trouble. You're allowed to stand up there and say, down with the government. So it's ironic that he's a lefty, although he's notably pretty anti the way that Te Pāti Māori are going about things. So I'll give him that. But he's a lefty, and right now, the only people who are anti-freedom are the left. The right are inherently pro-freedom. That's the difference. He believes that MAGA is anti-freedom, just because they have a conservative base. But if you actually look at the ideological views of MAGA, it's very much pro-freedom. We want to reduce the amount of influence the government has on your life so that you can go about living as you wish. We're going to do our best to ensure that you're not being exploited, But at the same time, we want to give you as much freedom as you possibly can. We want to reduce the amount of taxes that are burdening you. We want to give you more opportunity to invest where you like, to utilize the systems that you'd like. It's all about freedom. Whereas the left is very much the opposite. They want to increase your tax burden. They want to dictate what you can and cannot do. They want to ensure that in terms of what you're being educated on, it aligns with their worldview. That you hold certain political views, you hold certain societal views that align with them, because any other type of view is inherently evil, oppressive, negative, not conducive to a civil society or a society that is progressive. The left wants to control you, whereas the right does not. The progressives, the left, they want to control you, whereas MAGA wants to do the opposite. MAGA says you don't even have to agree with us. But would you like some more freedom? Because we'll give you that for breakfast, lunch, and tea. But as far as foreign policy goes, Trump has a very aggressive style. An aggressive style which is infinitely superior to any of his predecessors. Foreign policy, which you may not like, is aggressive but achieves the goals he desires. He's far closer to putting the whole Ukraine-Russia issue to bed than any other president has. He's far closer to putting the Israel-Palestine issue to bed than anyone else has. Why? Because it's his style. He defused tensions with North Korea because of this aggressive style. He temporarily brought peace to the Middle East until Biden came in and ruined it all. Trump's record on foreign policy is infinitely superior to anyone that old Paul here would cite. So let's not sit here and pretend that anything he said about Trump's foreign policy is accurate. Not to mention that he hasn't even abandoned Ukraine. He's taken a hardline approach with Ukraine, which has paid dividends, which is going to see things improve sooner rather than later. Didn't you see? Ukraine was, we don't want to do this, we don't want to do this, we don't want to do this. Then they realized that they have no choice because they don't have any choice. The Biden administration were yes men. They said, hey, Zelensky, you do this, you do this, you do this, you do this. You tell us what you want and we'll just keep helping you do it. As long as it's not ending the conflict, we will help you. They were yes men to prolonging the war. Zelensky got comfortable with that. And that's why Zelensky was so anti what Trump's proposal was in the first place. Zelensky was not quite in the mindset to accept that there was no way forward. And so now Zelensky is slowly warming to the idea of, yes, we're going to have to make some concessions, but at least my people will stop dying. It's a mindset shift which only Trump is capable of achieving. Because Trump will not take no for an answer, and he will ensure that you side with him. And Trump has all the cards here, and that's why he's allowed to do that. He's not doing it because he's being evil. He's not doing it because he favors Putin. He's doing it because it's the best for everyone, and it's the most logical step forwards. Prolonging this simply wastes US money, wastes NATO money, and causes more deaths to Ukrainians at a far worse result to what concessions right now would bring. I agree with him that the coalition is not MAGA. They have very many differences. MAGA is very much a nationalist movement. This coalition is not. One of the parties is, but this coalition is not. This coalition subscribes to globalist ideologies. They are neoliberals. NZ First, less so, but at the end of the day, they're in a neoliberal government in a country that has been neoliberal for a long time. Very common in the West. The point being, this is a neoliberal globalist government that is being slightly hamstrung by a minor party, but outside of that, they have very little in common with MAGA in terms of a policy platform. Any remotely nationalist policy you see out of this government is coming from NZ First. Any policy that you see that is remotely pushing back on globalism is coming from NZ First. Radical reduction in spending and in government powers, that's coming from ACT for the most part, and credit to them for that. That's necessary. And this is why I've been saying for a little while now that the kind of best mix of parties, even though they ideologically don't align and they don't really get on because of just personalities, ACT and NZ First as a two-way government is infinitely superior to what we've currently got. They balance each other out very well. finding that middle ground and being able to implement that is very good. If ACT could just move away from globalism and implement their neoliberal worldview in a nationalist sense, then we would have one hell of a MAGA party. That is what it would be. We would have a MAGA government on steroids. If you ask National if they believe that they should control all of these government departments and systems, they will tell you yes. They may say that we want to dramatically reduce how it looks, so it's small government technically, but in effect, in practice, they don't want to reduce the amount of power they have. They don't want to give up power. ACT is more willing to do that. New Zealand First to a lesser degree, but still more so than National. But at the very least, ideologically speaking, they are nationalist. And so that is the element of the coalition which does indeed align with MAGA.